Hello, I'm Ana Sevilla and I'd like to tell you about a very useful pedagogical tool, digital storytelling. Here's the outline of my presentation. I'll tell you a definition about digital storytelling, the kinds of digital stories there are, general information about them, examples, tips, the steps to be followed when creating your digital story, and then a conclusion. Before getting started, it is advisable that you read about basic things that you should know about digital storytelling in websites such as the one you see on the screen. Digital storytelling is the practice of combining narrative with digital content, including images, sound, and video, to create a short movie, typically with a strong emotional component. There are sophisticated digital stories, which are interactive movies that include highly produced audio and visual effects, but there are also basic digital stories, for example, a set of slides with corresponding narration or music. There are different kinds of digital stories: instructional, which teach you something, the ones that are trying to convince you about something, the ones that tell you about historical events, and the ones that are trying to make you reflect. There are different resources that you can use. These are virtually limitless, giving you enormous creative latitude. Some learning theorists believe that as a pedagogical technique, storytelling can be effectively applied to nearly any subject. Constructing a narrative and communicating it effectively require the storyteller to think carefully about the topic and consider the audience perspective. So it is a very important cognitive work. How does it work? Well, usually you create groups of students that can collaborate together on creating their digital stories. A number of simple applications can get someone started making digital stories, though more complex applications can be used in sophisticated stories. Depending on the elements that you include, a student might need a recording device such as a microphone, hardware and software to manipulate images and video, and tools to take pictures and video. Some applications are freely available online. There are several basic steps to be followed when creating your digital story. A digital story typically begins with a script. Then the storyteller has to assemble rich media to support the ideas and emotions, including music or other audio effects, personal or public domain images, animations or video, and other electronic elements. The storyteller pieces together and edits the digital story, creating a short movie, usually about 2 to 4 minutes long or even longer, in one of various file formats. It is significant because people tell stories to teach different things, and the oral tradition of knowledge transfer and exchange has served as the basis for education since humans began teaching one another. And digital stories build on this model by incorporating rich dynamic media. So we're taking the oral tradition from the past and giving it a present-day format with the media we use. The process of creating a digital story forces storytellers to choose a topic that can be conveyed to a particular audience with different elements in a dynamic process that gives them the opportunity to reflect on life and to find deep connections with the subject matter. Digital stories let the students express themselves with their own words and also with their own voices. So here's the concept of owning, and it is also important to focus on self-identity, self-representation, and the concept of empowerment. Here's a list of some examples of digital stories. You find Engineering 101, How is Combat Changed My Life, from the Center of Digital Stories, The Last Great Adventure, and Pedagogia Comunicacional Interactiva, which doesn't have a narration. It is just the story with the visuals, photos, sound effects, and music, but no narration. If you start a project on digital storytelling, it might be useful to complete several surveys. One pre-survey before starting, and then a final survey to get to know what the students thought about the experience. Here's a list of steps that you can follow. First, you prepare your script, then you look for appropriate images, videos, and music. You watch some other examples of digital stories. You decide the kinds of media that you'd like to use. Then you decide the software. Next, you learn about important things to bear in mind when creating a digital story, and you can also read some tips for telling your story digitally You can find them on the internet. And here's an example of those tips. Tip 1 would be to use 7 elements to plan the story script and content. The first element is a point of view, which is very important because it will help you to decide your story's message and why it is important to tell that story and who the audience will be. The second element is a dramatic question that is posed by the narrator at the beginning of the story to create tension and draw in the audience. The next element is emotional content, and it is important because it can be helpful creating a story with emotional content such as incidences of loss, redemption, crisis, or change. They are key to keeping your audience engaged and interested. It is what everybody can relate to and what makes stories so universal. Voice is very important. A good narrator can help give your digital story direction and personality, and it is advisable to adopt an informal tone. Soundtrack is also very important, but remember that instrumental music is always more advisable because in this way the lyrics won't interfere with your narration or contradict your message, and you should also keep the volume to an appropriate volume to avoid drowning out the narrator's voice. Economy is very important, so try to be as brief as you can in order to make your story short, sweet, and emotionally compelling. Pacing is important, that it's the rhythm. Don't be too fast, but don't be too slow either. Try to find a happy medium, varying the amount of time that images stay on the screen, and using effects such as panoramic, zoom, in and out when appropriate. The second tip is to build the story's visuals around the script and voiceover, and not the other way around. Remember that the script is the basis of your story. The third tip is to focus on still images instead of video clips, but it will depend on your degree of technological skills. If you're new to technology, it's always more advisable to focus on still images. You should also respect copyright laws. Try to use your own content and materials as much as possible, and if you want to borrow some other materials, try to use those materials from artists and musicians which have made their work available online to use freely. Use free software too to keep costs low or inexistent, and use different free audio tools such as the one you see on screen, Audacity, image editing tools that are also free or low cost, free movie assembly tools such as Movie Maker, and then keep your digital stories accessible, trying to include subtitles, making sure that deaf or blind people can follow your story, no problem. The last tip is that you should circulate your story among your peers or colleagues for feedback, get their comments, their ideas, in order to improve and to get some information regarding tone, structure, and content, and also give your feedback to the creators of other stories because they might find your feedback very useful too. In conclusion, we can say that students enjoy generating original electronic content and sharing it online, and digital storytelling fits well with these models of student expression. Students creating digital stories develop proficiency with multimedia applications, and they have a deeper impact that comes from their thinking critically about effective combinations among audio and visual elements. And in the case of languages learning, they also develop communication and linguistic skills and pronunciation. Each story challenges a student to select from personal collections or from other resources artifacts that meaningfully support the story and to assemble them in a way that achieves the desired effect. In doing so, students develop a discerning eye for online resources, increasing their technological and media literacy. Thank you very much.